Hello, everybody. Welcome. And those walking around, come on in. Come on in. We don't bite. So again, Shannon Flanagan, founder and CEO of the nonprofit Retail Women in Tech, trying to drive parity in our industry by 2030. I could go on for 3 hours about it if you want me to bend your ear. But this isn't about me. We're here to hear about you guys. So who are you?
I'm Michele.
I'm Michele. Nice to meet you.
Hi, everyone. I'm Michele Fisher. I think I have to
I know.
move it up this way.
Try.
It's nice to see you all here, and thank you for joining. I work at Microsoft. I lead our strategy around marketing, agentic commerce, and CX for the retail and consumer goods industry, and have had a lot of years in the marketing industry as well, and have seen it completely upended in some of the best and some of the most confusing and some of the I don't even know how to comment on that kind of ways.
Totally.
So thank you for joining, and I'll pass it off to Howe.
All right. My name is Howe, SVP of Partnerships at Rezolve AI. Super excited to be here because Michele and I actually go way back from our times at Microsoft. And I think especially the topic today in terms of marketing to machine is so timely. It's something that everybody's thinking about, everybody's asking questions about. Am I marketing machines? Am I marketing to humans? Am I marketing to humans and machines? What does that mean? So we're going to really dive deep and pull the onion back on that one.
All right, so let's do it. One of the things I love about doing these panels is I learned something new. Didn't even know this was a term. So I got to dive into this topic. So I'm going to set the stage before we start the questions. So digital transformation, how many times have you guys heard that in your career? I'm sure the last decade, I think, and then it became so benign. What did it even mean anymore? The other thing that we have been doing for the last decade is talking about the customer journey and where we meet the customer. Obviously, we all know we had an explosion of channels. I did omni-channel transformation for 3 different brands, and it was so simple then. It was just mail, direct mail, stores, online. So it's become increasingly complicated to meet customers where they are. And I think very few of us saw this disruption happening. The reality is the customer journey looks very different than it did 2 years ago, even. The rapid state of change, we're all experiencing it as individuals, let alone in industry. And supposedly, consumers are now 80% of the time using recommendations that are now much more increasingly AI influenced, and AI starting to do the shopping. So we're entering a world where products are being discovered before a customer even shops. So what that means, the new question, and this is the one I was so excited to hear more about your opinions on, is are we still marketing to customers or now marketing to machines? So let's go ahead and dive in. So first question is, how is AI changing the way customers discover products? And does that mean what does that mean to being agent aware? And how do people really put it in practice? Because I don't know how long this term has been going around, but I had just heard about it. It doesn't mean anything, but I started to stay up to date. But I think it's a paradigm shift, right, for the way retailers and brands are thinking. So who wants to go first?
Ladies first.
I'd be happy to go. So about 72% of customers, and this is according to a recent study that was done by Microsoft in particular, are expecting intelligence when they're on their shopping journey. I think that what I'm seeing a lot of these days is not so much focus on the shopping journey and the agentic consumer as much as how are we going to remain discoverable, which are actually 2 totally separate topics. So when you have a customer and a shopper, for example, that is expecting what we're calling intelligence on tap, I'm able to ask a question and I get an answer immediately. That is going to transcend not only across the shopping journey, but also across how we work. It's going to change how we think about the interface of our e-commerce platforms. There are several customer journeys that the agentic consumer is now expecting us to totally evolve into in a very short period of time. And in retail, if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
We're as fast as our businesses are and run, we're not fast to change internally.
Right.
Yep.
I just read an awesome quote from one of my good friends that was, if the bathtub is warm, why get out? And
because it'll get cold. Because it'll get cold. That's why you want to get out.
But now all of a sudden there's an imperative, and that's a complete and utter shift to how we need to reach those agentic consumers.
Yeah, and just to add on, Michele, what you were saying, I think I don't have a specific stat like you do, but what I can say is that there's not a single customer that we have been talking to that has not thought about where and how they show up on the big LLMs, because all of the merchants, all the brands recognize that customer journeys are starting differently. It's not on Google search anymore. It's through Claude, it's through Gemini, it's through ChatGPT. And so all of our merchants and all of our customers are thinking, wow, like what's going to happen to my brand? What's going to happen to my product? Am I going to be disintermediated? Am I going to be commoditized? And I think this goes to the topic today is around who am I actually marketing to, right? Who am I actually engaging my brand with? And so this is where, we have actually, just a quick shout out to Lawrence and Authoritas, where we are actually working really partnering close together to help bring that insight. So for example, ChatGPT or OpenAI has a partnership with Reddit, right? And a lot of where they pull their citations from is from Reddit. And so if you're a brand and you care about how you show up on OpenAI, well, what is your presence on Reddit, right? And so those are the things that's really important for these brands as they're trying to be agent aware that are coming onto their site to make sure that they are then positioning themselves in the right way, in the right places, so that they can be visible, they can be discovered, and then ultimately be transactable. Now, the other thing I want to point out is that if I'm a merchant, that is also a big risk, because now this journey is starting over there and I don't have control of that journey. And so how do I bring that intelligence? How do I bring that experience on site, onto my .com, onto my mobile, so that I can then provide that intelligence, provide that conversational experience, that agentic experience, so that I can have much more control and influence over the shopping journey and shopping experience.
If I can comment on that, because I completely agree with you. And I'm Microsoft, so I brought a PowerPoint.
Oh, and I totally forgot you got to go through and lay the ground. I just was so excited to ask you guys questions, but it's at the stage. Take it away.
Well, so what I wanted to talk about through with the agentic consumer and speaks to what you're talking to as well.
Am I blocking it?
Is
Can you
more
guys
around
see it?
this collapse of the customer journey. And so in reaching your agentic consumer, for example, you used to have as a marketer all of these different touch points that we tried for years and years to figure out which one came first, which one was acquisition, which one, drove brand. And now, especially with we're getting rid of cookies as well, there's fewer and fewer spots that we can actually grab to understand how the customer journey is actually working. And so where we used to have this entire journey to cart, now what we're looking at is a collapse to an agent and that delegation. People are moving away from, having a conversation even to just delegating, here's what I want, here's the price that I want it at, the color that I want it at, and I expect you to personalize that journey for me and give me 3 options. How do you show up when the delegation has already happened? So to answer what you were saying, Howe, I do think that an agent is a customer. So we have to now split that strategy from going directly to customers to also thinking about marketing to the agents and understanding where that discoverability is going to produce the best results, which brings in another topic about measurement. How are we even looking at measurement today when the customer journey is split? We're not sure what good means necessarily in this context. So there's a lot of questions, more questions than answers, unfortunately, about how this customer journey will evolve.
Actually, just on that point, because I was actually thinking about that concept of agent as a customer. And I was thinking about, is an agent just a really good butler, just does exactly what you want? Or is an agent something that has room or flexibility to interpret your goals and therefore be able to be influenced and swayed by data, by marketing, by citations, by whatever it is? I'd love to hear your thoughts around that, because if an agent is a customer, are we able to influence the agent customer the way that we influence human customers?
Well, and that's interesting that butler is great, and a stylist, right? Or a personal shopper that you used to get in stores. So yes, go away. That's a good one.
There's a few different ways that I would tackle this. One is looking at which customer journey you're talking about, for example. There's the way that retailers are having to think about it today, and brands, actually more CPG brands than retailers, is how do I become a discoverable in an LLM versus a Sparky or a retailer agent, for example, versus updating my site and having my site be more discoverable as opposed to forums like Reddit, so that I can make sure that all of the content that's surfacing in the LLM is going to represent my brand and my brand voice. And then there's also the brand agent. So maybe you're updating your search, or maybe you're actually putting an agent on your site that is having that one-to-one conversation around styling. It seems to be the number one use case, by the way.
We have so many choices. I mean,
Yeah.
we need this help, right?
Everyone's got a wedding in Mexico that says beach formal, and no one knows how to do it. And that seems like the case that people go to ChatGPT or
Living in
Copilot.
London, wedding in Greece is our wedding in Mexico.
Oh, okay, got it. See, it's always one. You have to select your location.
Yes.
Sometimes, it's Barcelona.
Yeah.
So anyway, there's multiple different journeys in which we have to think about where to prioritize.
I agree. And I think even the word agent, we say agent a lot. And I feel like the word agent kind of almost loses. But if you think about it, it's about giving agency to something, right? Or
That's
someone.
quotable. You could
And-
trademark that.
And it's
I know,
how
it's
much
good.
agency are you giving an autonomous machine to act on your behalf? How much room are you giving agency? Are you giving this machine to interpret your goals, to interpret your intent? And I think that, to me, is kind of an unknown almost at this point, right? And therefore, it gives us as Rezolve, for example, where we are representing the interests of merchants, to say, what are the agents that you need to build? What is the data structure and architecture and orchestration you need to build in order to meet the intent, meet these ambiguous goals that perhaps a human, has, that this agent is acting on behalf of?
If I can ask you a question then, Howe. So how does Rezolve AI think about this question in particular? How are customers going to stay how are brands going to stay in the transaction in this new world? Now that they're marketing to machines, now that they're marketing to agents, should a brand be thinking about that?
I mean, I'll provide a few anecdotal stories, just conversations we're having, because to be honest, I don't think anybody's really figured it out at this point. I think for us to say like, yep, this is it, I think people are going to call me out on this for
The
sure.
goalposts keep moving, right? It's just when you think you get there.
100%. But to me, I think as a brand, you've obviously invested a lot in terms of the marketing of your brand, in terms of the emotional connection, the tone, the personality, having people that are proud to wear a Nike or to wear, Adidas or whatever it is. So you spend a lot of money doing that. And I think in the agentic world, I think that still very much matters. I actually think brands that are really strong will continue to thrive and do really well, because the humans that actually understands that brand, understands the value of the brand, of wearing something or eating something of a certain brand because they trust it or they like it or they prefer it, I think that will continue to be matter. I think where brands or retailers become more concerned is where their brand is not strong, and really they're more of an intermediary almost between a customer and a product, a service, or an experience. And I think in those cases, if you're an intermediary or you're a facilitator of commerce, I think that's where the risk is. And I think that's where we're trying to figure out and help, like whether it's department stores, whether it's supermarkets, whether it's, where you are essentially a either physical intermediary or a digital intermediary of commerce. I think this is where you're going to be mostly disrupted by AI and agents, where you need to figure out what your strategy is.
Can I ask a question as it relates to this week, because we were talking about it, right? The world now is so complex. There are so many choices, right, for retailers to make. What technologies, where do they start? And again, the speed of everything. So how do they get started? Like, what are the no regret moments in the worlds that you guys are operating in, and how you're seeing where the early successes are, and that the effort and cost and impact makes the most sense? Because it's hard to figure out. I mean, you've got 1,000 tools you could pick from. You've got all of these use cases that seem, so sexy and easy, but a lot of them are hard. So what are your points of view around that?
Scott, go up first.
Yeah. So, okay, sure, I'll start. To me, it's, with anything AI, data has to be your foundations.
Yes.
If there's anything that is a no regret, it is data. And so, and how you prep that data, how you organize it, how you structure it, how you enrich it to make it discoverable, to make it transactable. That to me is something that every single merchant and brand and retailer, hospitality provider, whoever it is, should be thinking about, right? Because these agents are now coming to your site, they're looking for something that is going to help the humans achieve a certain intent and goal. Does your product have the attributes, the descriptions, the meta tagging for it to be discoverable, for it to be transactable? And so that to me is, everybody needs to be investing in that. That should be an absolute no regret.
Well, I remember, so I've been, I'm not a technologist, by the way, but have been in the world of driving change, and data has been a discussion topic for a long time. But there was no ROI on those projects, right? So it got all thrown into a data warehouse, and then we had the snowflakes, right, to pull it together. But I remember a couple of years ago, and here it started to change, that this data first mindset. But that's also a paradigm shift for the way retailers have thought about the projects that they're undertaking, both from a tech perspective as well as from a business perspective. Are you seeing that shift happen?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, data is your competitive advantage now, and in ways that it has never been your competitive advantage before. So I think of it in 3 key steps as you were talking. You have to unlock the data estate and unify the data silos that exist within your first-party data, your third-party data, your CDP, for example. How are you combining the tribal knowledge that exists within Word and PowerPoint so that when the people who work for you, your employees, are actually developing this strategy around agentic commerce, they're using intelligence on tap across the entire data estate. Second of all, so it's really rewiring your intelligence from the data estate, but then rewiring your workflows is just as important. So where I'm seeing a lot of traction and a lot of interest coming from both retailers and CPG brands is, how do I break apart all of the silos within my organization where that data lives and elevate them to be agent bosses and have sub-agents that are doing the more menial tasks? What are the more strategic things that my employee is going to do now that they have these sub-agents? And so that actually starts disintegrating what workflows used to be. It's almost as if you're asking, for example, somebody who's been in creative their entire life and they have practiced this. Now they have to own the entire strategy of the sub-agents. So I'll give an example of that. One of the key workflows that I'm seeing being blown up a little bit is the one of the team that is working in merchandising and marketing. So it's
about time, by the way, that
right.
They're working so closely together.
So the owners of the PIM, for example, where all of the category information lives, where all of the keywords that are going to be, discoverable, they're going to make the brand discoverable, or product discoverable, or product launch go well, needs to be connected to a DAM, a digital asset management system, so that as products are evolving, the content is evolving, you have the DAM that's also evolving with it. And you don't have to go in manually, for example, which is very manual process today, go and update all of that content. So that's one workflow where data, mutual understanding of data is going to be critical, and actually having these autonomous agents that can do that for you. And then something that we never connected really in the past is brand guidelines. You've got brands that are, stationed all over the world with different kinds of products. How do you ensure compliance? So there's a workflow there that is right now in this point in time very much in silos. You have a VP of e-commerce, you have the CMO, and there are different strategies there. What I'm seeing is also a melding of the C-suite. So in order to make these workflows actually happen, there needs to be mutual goals that are given to both a CTO, a CIO, a CMO, et cetera, so that these, from the bottom up, everybody is working and off the same sheet of music.
Well, and this, let's face it, I've been around the block. Retailers are not great at the cross-functional collaboration, and that's a requirement. Now, it's not fair. We could talk for like 3 more hours, and we didn't even get to my favorite topic, which is the change management piece. And I would say that there is something that's really important. I think a lot of people are thinking about AI as an efficiency play. It's a human optimization play of the potential and making people love what they do. Creative people didn't want to be in spreadsheets. Merchants didn't want to be in the Excel spreadsheets doing these things. So in the final, I think 9 seconds, I know you had a great slide. Maybe you want to flash that up there and people could take a picture because it is so important on your change management slide.
Let's see.
And do we get another second or two before we close out so we can, let's see, this one. Oh, I think this was, I'll get out of the way so people can take a picture. This one is so important.
I think I'm in the way of my own slide as well, so
We'll
I
share
don't
the
quite
slides
know
out.
what to do with
Yeah.
that. But I mean, it's something that even internally at Microsoft, we're consistently working on is how do you start building a culture of people that understand how to leverage agents and intelligence on tap, which is something that I mentioned earlier. So how do you get a culture of people who are comfortable building new agents, who are comfortable going through a marketplace of agents and using it in their daily workflow? You know, we have this amazing team that's working specifically on how to build out what we call the frontier firm, which is this idea around evolving from where we sit today to agent bosses working with sub-agents and sub-agents working autonomously. And what the thought leader at Microsoft in this space said was that he puts together book clubs within an organization. He has people from the, individual contributor level that are focusing on very specific tasks all the way up to the C-suite in a conference room. And it's, maybe 8 to 12 people that are representing it. And they actually chart the entire workflow of who does what and why we do it. So I think those are the types of exercises that at least get everyone involved in the mentality. And then you have leaders in your organization that are willing to go and spread that knowledge and implement it across middle management. So
well, as somebody who's done change management for the last 20 plus years, I always said, just get people in a room together. That's really the easiest solve.
Yes.
Just get them in a room and look at what you guys do, and it's all about shared success.
Well,
now,
and I think, sorry, just
I want to hear from you too.
I think we talk about the frontier AI a lot. Every week, almost every day, we have new models coming out that's better at this, better at this. And I think it's, yes, we want to push the boundaries of what AI could do, but just as importantly, AI diffusion to me is just as important, both at an organizational level, but also at a societal level, it's almost humanity level as well, as how do we make sure that AI is as accessible to the broader population, to broader society? How do we make sure that these experiences, these capabilities is diffused across society so that we're not creating that stratification? And I think this not only applies, I think, at an organizational level, a lot of these principles actually is very applicable societal. And I think for us as Rezolve, yes, we work with a lot of merchants. We make sure these AI experiences are available for customer journeys, but it also means that there's more and more people are able to experience these AI journeys, not just kind of yes, it's 1 billion people using ChatGPT, but there's 8 billion people in the world. And how do we enable commerce experiences for the rest of the 7 billion that are out there?
Well, and I think the partnerships like you two have, these are the ways that we're going to change the way people do, because it's the cross-disciplinary and cross-functional views, not just within a retailer, right, but within all the service providers and consulting providers. So we did go over time. I want to thank everybody for coming. It was a pleasure to get to know you two.